Hi guys, I'm not sure how to say what this post is about. I recently noticed some changes in my wife, and I'm trying to get to the root of it. I love my wife very much, so I don't want to jump to conclusions and make a big mistake. I'm very nervous and scared. I don't know what to expect. I'm going to be making an update to this post every week as I try to find out what secrets my wife has been keeping from me. I want my fellow Redditors to give me advice on the next step to take after each post. It took me a lot of time to know something was off, and now that I know, there's no going back. I need to know the truth. My name is Jason, and I'm 35 years old. I've been married to my beautiful wife, Tina, who is 31 years old for 2 years. Our marriage is a love marriage, and I fell in love with her from the very first day I saw her. I know how cheesy and cliche that sounds, but trust me, I mean it. I work at a PR company that takes up my time a lot, so finding a partner was quite difficult for me. I did not have the time to go on dates and flirt with potential partners, so I had to give in to my sister's demands to set me up. Tina was the second girl my sister introduced to me, and she drew my interest almost immediately. My wife is beautiful, confident, and very intelligent, and those are qualities I was drawn to when I met her 4 years ago. I did not have time to properly date her at first, so we just talked over the phone and texted for the first few weeks. But after some time, I knew I felt something strong for her, and that's how we started dating. We dated for 1 year before I proposed, and then we got married some months later. My marriage with my wife has been beautiful, and I really hope it still is. I don't know if my fellow Redditors will ever understand how much this breaks my heart to even write this. It's a mix of anxiety, fear, and hope, because I never thought the day would come when I would write about my marriage on Reddit and seek advice. My wife is everything I ever dreamed of, and I have blessed the day we got introduced every minute. It's been 2 years, guys. My wife and I have been married for the past 2 years. We have explored our marriage and adjusted to life in the best way we could. Consequently, months after we got married, my wife told me she lost her job. I never really knew where she worked. All I knew was that she was a fashion designer. She told me she needed a job, so I tried to find one close to our house in New York, but she insisted on the one that was almost a 2-hour drive from our house because she preferred the working environment. We considered the tedious journey, so I rented an apartment for her close to her working place. My wife stays at her apartment from Mondays to Wednesdays, and then she stays at our place for the rest of the week. I didn't really like the arrangement at first because of the distance between us, but I got used to it. I'm also busy myself, so there's not much difference. This has been our arrangement for the past 2 years, and we've made it work. But I've noticed that this arrangement has not been what I thought it was. I'm still in doubt, even as I write this. I've never hoped to be wrong in my entire life, but now I hope I'm wrong. I hope that this post is a mistake, and I'll end up coming to tell you guys how wrong I'd been. I know you all are wondering, what are the changes you noticed in your wife? Let me put it this way. I don't think there has been any changes. The only difference is that I have more time in my hands now, and I'm noticing that some things are really fishy. I got promoted last week at work, so that means I have reduced my workload. I even have days off the week now that I can spend however I want. Because of this change, I've been home a lot. I have noticed that my wife doesn't really keep to our usual schedule. I caught my wife breaking our arrangement. Yes, Redditors, you read that right. My wife had not followed the schedule we made. She does not stay at our house for the 4 days we agreed on. I wanted to surprise her with my promotion by coming home earlier than usual last week. It was a Thursday, and I wanted to see the shock on her face when she found me home earlier than expected. I parked my car outside the gate that day because I did not want her to hear me driving in. I tiptoed into the house and slowly walked into our room. To my surprise, my wife was not at home. I did not find her even after searching the whole house. I was very surprised because she was supposed to be at home on Thursdays. I got worried and decided to call her that day. "Where are you?" I asked her after we exchanged greetings. I remember how relaxed my wife had been as she answered over the phone. "I'm at home, of course." "Why are you asking?" After ending the call, I assumed I did not search the house enough, so I searched it a second time, but my wife was still nowhere to be found. Dear Redditors, I was really disturbed that day. I felt very confused and doubtful. Why did my wife lie to me about her whereabouts? I kept asking myself that question because honestly, I found it fishy. I waited for her to come back home for hours, but she didn't. I even had a shower and got dressed, yet I did not see my wife. I assumed she was at work, but I couldn't understand why she preferred to hide that fact from me. She got back at 7:30 p.m. that night, which is almost an hour before I usually get back from work. "Where have you been?" I asked her immediately as she entered the bedroom. My wife looked very surprised to see me. She could not answer at first, but after some seconds, she smiled as she answered, "You got home quite early today. I just went out to get some ice cream." I was surprised because she made it seem like she had been home all day and she wasn't home all day. "I've been here since 1 p.m. I did not see you home. When I called, you said you were home." I said to her because, dear Redditors, I needed to know where she had been. I saw no reason why she had to lie if she just went out to get ice cream. "I'm sorry, I got stuck in traffic and I did not want to let you know so you would not get worried," my wife told me. I did not buy her excuse because I knew there was no traffic that day. There was a bakery some blocks away from our house. She did not need to drive miles away to get an ice cream. Though I was suspicious, I did not want to make a fuss about it. The whole incident made me forget all about my promotion, and I did not tell her about it that day. That's the first change I noticed, guys. My wife lied to me twice that day. The next day was a Friday, and I expected my wife to be home. She got dressed and told me she wanted to go get groceries, then she left the house. I made myself breakfast and waited for my wife to get back so I could take her out on a date. Guess what, guys? My wife did not get back home for hours. I waited from 7 a.m. when she left till 2 p.m. I got worried and called her phone to ask where she was. She told me she was at home. Yes, guys. My wife lied again. I found it very annoying at that point. I even thought she was trying to prank me on the phone. My wife proceeded to ask me how my work was going. That's when it hit me, guys. My wife did not know I was at home. She thought I went to work because I did not tell her about the promotion yet. I forgot to tell her the day before, so she had no clue about it. So when she left for the grocery store in the morning, she assumed I'd be at work before she got back, in which case, she did not come back. I am not joking, guys. I'm serious. My wife lied for the third time. When I got off the phone that day, that's when all the questions started popping up. I asked myself if this was how she'd been lying to me all this while. I didn't know why she lied or what was going on, but I knew it was not right. If she made up stories to leave the house in my absence, then something was very fishy. I practically paced around the house that day. Yes, I was so confused. I had to piece the puzzles together. My dear Redditors, I went crazy that day trying to understand what was happening. I started racking my brain to remember how many times she left the house before me and if she did the same thing all these while. I hate lies, and the fact that my wife was lying to me made me very upset. But I did not want to confront her without getting my facts straight first. At approximately 5:30 p.m. that day, I decided to call her again and ask her to make me my favorite pasta dish if she was home. Tina insisted she was home and told me she could make the pasta for me. Guys, you can imagine the shock I felt. I was standing right in our kitchen and I could hear my wife shuffling through spoons and pans over the phone, and she was telling me she was already putting the pots together so she could make the pasta immediately. That's when I knew there was fire on the mountain. She went as far as pretending to be in our kitchen, shuffling through the pantry, looking for all the ingredients for the pasta. Unknown to her that I was in the kitchen at that very moment. At that moment, I realized two things, guys. My wife lied to me, and she was not at home, and wherever my wife was, it was definitely not her working place. She was at her apartment. That's the conclusion I came to. I don't understand why my wife would lie about being at home. It also did not make sense that she would be at her apartment when she was not supposed to be working on Fridays. It did not also make sense that even though she was working, she was at her apartment instead of being at the fashion store. In order to be absolutely sure my suspicion for my wife was not unnecessary, I decided to leave the house before she got back from wherever she went that day. I left the house to go see a friend in the evening at 7 p.m. and catch up with him. I got home at 8:30 p.m. that day, and my wife was already home. She asked why I was late, and I told her I had a lot of things to do at work. She told me she was worried because my pasta had gotten cold. Yes, guys, you read that right. My wife lied to have made pasta for me. I was shocked and couldn't understand how that was possible when she was not at home. I did not question her, though. I ate the pasta after she microwaved it for me. After my wife went to bed, I had to go check the kitchen to see what was going on. I did not think it was possible for her to make the pasta within an hour after I left, and then it got cold. Dear Redditors, I got the shock of my life. Again. In the waste bin, I found a plastic takeout bag from a restaurant. That meant my wife got me takeouts on her way back and pretended to have made the pasta so I wouldn't suspect anything. To be honest, guys, I was disappointed in her that night. I was very disappointed because I never imagined her lying to me for any reason. I spent the past 3 days thinking about what happened that night, guys. I caught my wife lying to me for 2 consecutive days. It was very suspicious and disappointing. I don't want to jump to conclusions, and that's why I'm taking Reddit on this journey with me. I want you all to advise me after each update so I don't end up taking the wrong steps. I can't help but wonder if she has always lied to me, but I was too busy to even notice it. Please let me know what to do, guys. Update. I can't believe it's already been a week since I posted this. Time flew by so quickly, guys. I did not expect so many of you to help me out and tell me what to do. When I made the post, I only actually expected 15 comments at most. I did not think anyone was interested in my state of confusion. But I have a lot of comments. I can't reply to each one, but I'll try my best. Let's get to the business of the day. Let me tell you all how things have been for the past 1 week. So, I listened to all of you and decided not to jump to conclusions until I knew exactly what was going on. Most of you said no one likes to be wrongly accused without facts. I love my wife too much to do that to her, so I patiently waited to get my facts straight. I won't lie, guys. To be honest, the past week has been crazier than I thought it would be. I was so nervous after this post because I did not know what to expect. It was an influx of emotions. My wife and I spent Saturday and Sunday going on dates and having a nice time. She did not sneak out during the weekend because she knew I'd be home throughout. At some point, I even forgot about the post I made because my wife and I were back to enjoying our marriage. In other words, life was back to the way I knew it. The real trouble appeared all over again after the weekend was over. It was Monday, and my wife had to go to her workplace and spend 3 days there. I normally left for work before her on Monday because of how hefty my workload had been. I had less workload, so I did not go early. I told her I wanted to rest a little before going. I listened to you all and did not tell her about my promotion yet. After my wife left for work, I went to the kitchen to grab some coffee. That's when I noticed something was off. Guys, my kitchen was practically empty. I used to be so busy that I ate takeout and hardly came to the kitchen. Consequently, anytime I came to the kitchen, I did not notice anything unusual. That day was different because I sent my wife grocery shopping during the weekend. I gave her my credit card like I usually did and asked her to get groceries. So, when I checked the kitchen and it was empty, I was very confused. I even checked the cupboards, refrigerator, and pantry, but the only things there were chips and juice. I checked to see if I was debited during the weekend. I normally just gave my wife my card to get whatever she wanted for herself or the house. I never checked, but that day, I had to. I was debited for $150 that day. I did not understand how just the two of us could have finished $150 worth of groceries in 2 days. That was another sign that I might have been missing a lot of details about what was going on in my house. I was so busy working that little things like that skipped my mind often. I went to work feeling very angry that day because I did not like the new mishaps I was noticing. It felt more frustrating because I could not even confront my wife immediately and ask her what was going on. I had to be patient, but trust me, the patience was practically slipping off my fingers that day. My dear Redditors, my mind was not at rest that day at all. Even my colleagues noticed my change in mood and asked what the problem was. I brushed it off and told them I was just feeling unwell. I was moody because the beautiful marriage and near-perfect wife I had seemed to be having problems. It was a problem that needed urgent repair because there was no way I was going to let my wife blindside me like that. So I had to think of a plan very fast, and I did so at work. I got home that day with the intention of getting to the bottom of the mystery. I took a 1-week leave from work. My boss was surprised because it is very unlike me, but he granted the leave to me. I planned to use that period to find out exactly what had been going on behind my back. So guys, the next day was a Tuesday, which meant that I had to send money to my wife. Ever since we got married, I usually sent her money for upkeep every Tuesday, since she lived in another apartment and needed to fund her feeding and needs. I never asked her questions about what she did with her money because honestly, it was not my business. I did not have a problem with providing for both of us. I sent her money as usual, and after some minutes, she called me to thank me. We talked on the phone for hours before we ended the call to get some sleep. I could not sleep that night because I had a lot going through my mind. I wanted to go see my wife the next day at her place of work. I've only been there once, and that was the first day I dropped her off there. The next day, I got ready and drove 2 hours to get to my wife's place of work. My dear Redditors, I was not ready for what I met there. I did not see my wife at the store when I got there. I asked the receptionist if she was aware of my wife's location, and the receptionist asked me what my wife's name was. I was surprised. I was very surprised because I assumed that the receptionist already knew who I was when I told her my name. My wife always told me how she bragged about me to her colleagues. Tina would tell me that her colleagues were very familiar with my pictures because she showed me off all the time. I felt very stupid at that moment because I realized that I did not really know a lot about my wife. I told the receptionist my wife's name, but the receptionist insisted that there was no one with that name working there. Yes, you read that right. Imagine the level of shock and embarrassment I felt after casually strolling into that fashion store and demanding to see my wife only to be told that she did not work there. I had to apologize for wasting her time before I exited the fashion store. Once I got into my car, I practically felt like screaming out loud. I had to think back to the first day I dropped Tina off at the fashion store. I wanted to walk her in, but she insisted I get to work before I get late. I listened to her because it was a 2-hour drive from the house and a 3-hour drive to my workplace. When my wife got fired from her previous job, my sister had found another job close to our house, but she rejected that job and said there was another job she liked, and her friend owned it. I did not question her because I believed she had the right to make her own choices. I questioned everything in the car that day because I realized that Tina lied about her job. I did not go to the wrong fashion store. I remembered dropping her there, and it was also the same name. I began to question a lot of things because what I found out was very suspicious. If my wife was not working at the fashion store, where would she have been going for the past 2 years? I had to ask myself that because I honestly believed I'd been living a lie. The next stop was my wife's apartment. I wanted to go see her there since she was not at work. I refused to call her and ask where she was because I already did that many times before. I refused to raise the alarm or give her a hint that I suspected her activities. I wanted to find out the exact truth without any traces of lies. When I got to the apartment, I stayed in my car for minutes, contemplating if I was making the right decision. To be honest, that day I wanted to grab my phone and ask for advice on Reddit before doing anything else. I wanted to speak to you all first, but I was too curious to even think properly. I got out of the car and proceeded to knock on the door. I waited for minutes, but I got no answer. I almost gave up and turned around, but then a little girl opened the door and asked me who I was. I was shocked and spooked to see a little girl of approximately 5 years old standing at the door of what was meant to be my wife's apartment. Trust me, nothing in this world prepared me for what happened after that. Just when I was about to say hello to the little girl, a man of approximately 30 years old, walked towards the door and stood behind the girl. I almost lost my footing because I did not expect to see a man or a girl there. The man had hard eyes and a very sharp stare. He watched me like a hawk watched its prey, and his eyebrows were raised in alarm. He asked me what I was doing in front of his apartment, and I told him I was looking for a woman named Tina. He glanced at me from head to toe before saying there was no one like that living there. I left the apartment after having to apologize for intruding. Yes, my dear Redditors, my wife also lied about the apartment. She did not live there. At first, I actually thought I was going crazy. I thought I went to the wrong address, but I did not. My wife lied to me. She blindsided me and deceived me. I began to question who I was married to because at that moment, I knew absolutely nothing about that woman. I went home feeling like the fool I currently know I am. That was 2 days ago. I have not even been able to look at my wife the same way. I cannot even look into her eyes and speak to her because I feel like everything has been a lie. I still don't know what she has been up to or who she has been with. I don't even know who she is right now. I wanted to confront her that very day, but I decided to let my fellow Redditors know first. I want you all to tell me what my next step should be, because I'm at the verge of losing my shit and going crazy. I hate lies, and I hate liars. The fact that a woman I love and hold so highly has lied to my face countless times makes me disgusted with not just her, but myself. Update 2. Hey everyone, I want to say a big thank you to all of you that took your time to comment and share your thoughts and opinions with me. You all have been the reason this quest for me to find out the truth has not consumed me. I appreciate all the kind words of affirmation, encouragement, and advice. I never imagined that I'll get so much love and care from people I've never even met before. Unfortunately, this will be our last update because I have finally found the answers to all the questions that consumed me for the past few weeks. I'm sorry this post is coming in almost after 4 weeks of keeping you all waiting. I had to take time off to understand why this evil predicament happened to me. Even as I write this, I'm struggling to breathe because the weight of the lies that were told to my face still haunt me till this day. I will no longer refer to Tina as my wife in this update because I no longer consider her my wife. After the previous post, I listened to what most of you advised, which was for me to confront Tina about the fashion store and apartment incident. It was a Sunday morning, and I called Tina to the living room. I told her everything that happened the day I went looking for her in the store and the apartment. Tina was so shocked. She could not even look me in the eyes. I was so desperate to be wrong that I held her hands and told her to tell me the truth, and that it was going to be fine. At that moment, if Tina had told me the actual truth, I would have forgiven her. That's how much I loved that woman. I would have forgotten all about her lies and given her a second chance. Well, she did not tell me the truth. Like all scheming bitches and heartless liars, she looked me in the eye and told me I was misconstruing everything. I asked her to explain what she meant, and she told me that the people at the apartment were her uncle and niece. I questioned why they did not recognize me or her name, and she told me that her uncle had amnesia, and he forgot things often. She even went as far as saying he was still undergoing treatment for his amnesia. I asked her why her niece didn't know her name, and she told me that her niece only knew her as Nona, and that's what she usually called her. I asked her about the fashion store, and she told me the receptionist I'd seen was a new worker. She was so confident and self-assured that I was almost tempted to believe everything she said. But I did not let myself fall straight into her trap. I pretended to believe her and apologize for misunderstanding her. I did not let myself get blindsided again and take her words seriously. I did that once and saw where it got me. The next day I called my sister and told her to meet me at a restaurant. My sister was the one who introduced us, so I needed to ask her how she knew Tina. My sister told me she did not know Tina personally. She said she had spoken to her friends to search for a match for me, and one of them introduced her to Tina. I told my sister everything that had been going on, and she was just as shocked as I was. She promised to do a background check on her. My dear Redditors, everything is about to get real messy now. I went home and searched through our wedding photos. I recalled that I'd only met Tina's parents thrice. They were nice and welcoming, and they approved of our marriage. The last time I saw them was a year and a half ago. She did not introduce any other family members to me except her friends, aunt, and cousins who were in the bridal tray. I did not see her uncle in any of those pictures. After my thorough investigation, I was certain that the man I'd seen that day was not her uncle. I was determined to get to the bottom of everything, so I decided to go back to the apartment the next day. When I got to the apartment, I decided to check the neighborhood first. I wanted to ask around and know if any of the neighbors recognized my wife. It was not easy at all because most of the neighbors were very suspicious of me and did not want to reveal any information till they were sure I actually knew her. I had to show them our wedding picture on my phone screensaver before some of them were ready to talk. A man who appeared to be of the same age group with me told me that it was not only Tina that lived in that apartment. He told me that she had been living there with a man and a child for the past year and a half. I almost lost my footing and fell to the ground as a result of the shock I felt that day. I showed him our picture again and asked him to make sure he was not mistaking Tina for someone else. He told me he was 100% sure that we were talking about the same person. Damn. My fellow Redditors, I was livid. I was embarrassed, angry, upset, and immensely disappointed. There was nothing more disgraceful than finding out you have been living a lie for over 4 years of your life. I felt like I knew who I was married to, but I did not. I decided to go to the apartment and demand answers from the man who lived there. I knocked on the door in a very violent manner. The door got unlocked almost immediately, but it was not the man I expected to see that was there. It was Tina. I saw Tina standing there with a fucking diaper in her hands, and she was holding the girl in her arms. I remember eyeing her up and down just to see her in nothing but a bum short and a crop top. I clenched my fist and punched the door immediately. I had no self-control at that point. I lost it completely and screamed on top of my lungs. She got scared, dropped her baby, and took a step backwards. I got into the apartment and looked around. If you all thought I'd seen the worst before, you're all wrong. The apartment looked like a replica of my house. Some of my vases, cutlery, and even clothes were hanging around like a fucking accessory. I demanded answers from Tina, but her uncle came out from one of the rooms before she could speak. He was wearing my boxer briefs. Yes, guys, you read that right. The fucking fool that she claimed was her uncle was wearing my own boxers. He yelled at me and asked me what I was doing in his apartment again. I felt like laughing in his face. An apartment I fucking paid the rent, water, and electricity bill for? An apartment I fully funded the food bills? An apartment I fucking gave to Tina? I felt stupid, but it was not his fault. I blamed Tina, and I blamed myself for not being more careful of the things that happened around me. The man tried to have a fist fight with me, but I grabbed a nearby vase and lunged for his head. He was able to turn back in time for it to hit his back. He fell to the ground as a result of the pain. Tina fell to her knees and started pleading for my forgiveness. She cried her eyes out and told me she was very sorry. I was so disgusted by the sight of her that I kicked her hands away when she tried to grab my legs. The only reason I did not fucking go crazy was because there had been a child present there. I asked Tina to tell me exactly what was going on. Yes, my dear Redditors, even after all that happened, I still wanted to hear the truth from Tina. She refused to speak and looked away. It was the little girl that finally made me know the truth. The girl ran to the man lying on the floor and screamed, "Mommy, Daddy is in pain." It was the most painful experience of my life. Tina had a child with the man she claimed was her uncle. The child had to be at least 6 years old, which meant Tina had a daughter before we even met. Tina, her daughter, and also the father of her child lived in the apartment I paid for the past 1 year. I decided to go check their kitchen, and that's when I got my answer. Groceries were packed in the kitchen, the refrigerator was stocked up, and the pantry was literally full. Everything was from my own money. That's why my groceries were finished in 2 days. I did not need to see anything else, so I left the apartment and went back to my house. The drive home that day had to be the most traumatizing drive of my life. I cried. Yes, I cried. I cried because I felt betrayed and used. I cried because I lost my marriage and wife in a single day. Everything had been a lie. My dear Redditors, I was so depressed that I drank myself to sleep. The whole house was empty, and I felt lonely. That night was the longest night of my life. The next day, my sister came to visit. She told me that after her research, she found out that Tina had a child and boyfriend before marrying me. I told her I already knew that, but my sister said there was more. Apparently, Tina hired the people that posed for her relatives and family on the wedding day. Even her friends and parents were fake. Yes, I lived a complete lie. My wife lived 2 lives at once. She pretended to be my wife while she had a boyfriend and child somewhere else. Tina made me get an apartment that was a 2-hour drive from my house so I would not have the time to come see her at work or visit her. She made me pay for the apartment she lived in with her boyfriend and her daughter. She took the money I gave her every Tuesday of the week to fund their lifestyle. She stole my groceries from my kitchen and stocked them up in their house. She stole from my house and closet and took them to her boyfriend. I practically provided for her and her little family. I was the trust fund she had bagged. I learnt my lesson the hard way. I fell in love with the wrong person. I trusted her blindly and took everything she said as honest words. I never doubted her decisions, and I never questioned her job. I never even noticed how she was stealing from me in broad daylight because I never imagined that I was married to someone's girlfriend. My dear Redditors, my life has taken a very unexpected turn, and it's taking me time to process it. I'm getting the divorce papers ready, but I do not have a 100% guarantee that Tina will not take part of my property. That's why I'm looking for a very strong lawyer in case we take the case to court. My sister has been my rock in this very tough time. I'm also thankful to my boss and colleagues who have tried to put a smile on my face. When I started writing this post, I never imagined that the truth I went in search for was going to shake my whole life unexpectedly. I do not regret this journey, though, because it saved me from living with a woman that was living two different lives. This is the last update, but I'll be ready to reply to comments. I still need time to process this experience, but I'll be back stronger.